1. This happened after I went to university, so I was 18. I made an effort to make friends after I moved onto campus, and ended up with a few groups to hang out with, including a new girlfriend, and plenty of people from my classes that I liked well enough. There was one class before lunch where it was traditional for people to go to the cafeteria afterwards, to eat in pairs or threes. I wasn't very discerning about who I'd have lunch with because I got on fine with most people from the class, and we were all trying to make an effort to be social. So when one girl, Lily, asked if I wanted to eat lunch together after that class, I didn't have any reason not to go. We talked about school and that kind of thing, nothing noteworthy, but she did ask me to get lunch with her again the next week. It became a pattern, and there wasn't exactly a way to start saying no suddenly. It was fine, but it did mean I lost the chance to eat lunch with anyone else in those days. In hindsight, I suppose that was the point. One day in class, I asked someone if I could add them on social media. This happened in front of Lily. I saw her face jerk towards me a couple of seats over. It was such a sharp reaction that it was hard to ignore, and I still remember it. By the time I got home later that day, Lily had sent me a friend request. No friends in common. Don't know how she knew my last name. I was a bit surprised, but I guess she just dug through the university social media pages and found me through there. It gave me a bad feeling, but surely it was fine. She ended up messaging me a lot and commenting on anything I posted. I told myself that she was just awkward, and we became friends, if not close. I'd known worse people. She still always got me to eat lunch with her after our one shared class. Other than that, we rarely spent time together in person. I saw her around sometimes, but I never went out of my way to hang out with her, so it was mostly online messaging and seeing each other in group settings. Coincidentally, my girlfriend was also called Lily. This was something that clearly bothered Lily, not my girlfriend, who couldn't have found it less interesting. It's a common name. She occasionally hinted that she wanted my girlfriend to pick a different name, or joked about her not suiting it. She clearly didn't like my girlfriend at all, and I had no idea why. It was hard to ignore by this point. Lily was starting to unsubtly hint that she had a crush on me. I tried not to address it, because what was I going to say? I've never known what to do when a friend makes a pass at me. I was also not interested in the least. Even ignoring the weird stuff she pulled, Lily was not my type at all. She tended to dress and act in a way somewhere between a 50s housewife and one of those adults who is still obsessed with the Disney princesses, if you can picture that. Things took an uncomfortable turn on the day of her last shared class of the year. Instead of asking me to lunch like she usually did, Lily asked if I'd go for a walk with her. Again, I didn't exactly know how to refuse, so I said, all right. Our campus was bordered by a large patch of woodland. Lily led me into the woods, and the sounds of our fellow students slowly faded away. She sat on a brown log, and I joined her. She started talking about how she was going to miss me over the summer. I tried placating her, but I didn't want to be there. Especially because she seemed almost on the verge of tears. I tried to make an excuse about having plans with my girlfriend, but before I could leave, Lily chose to kiss me without warning. It was uncomfortable, to say the least. I got out of there and was happy to think I wouldn't see her for a while. I came back to university after the summer, moving into a house with my friends. Without going off topic, there were some serious issues in my friend group, a lot of petty arguing and worse. I broke up with my girlfriend around the start of the school year as well, and basically the whole mess made me recontextualize things with Lily, because it suddenly didn't seem as bad. That said, I didn't want to be alone with her. We mostly talked online. She was still constantly messaging me after all. One upside of everything was that I started dating a boy. Lily was not pleased to hear that news. I think she hoped to sneak in after I broke up with my girlfriend, but as I said before, that was never going to happen. There wasn't a big gap between my breakup and this new relationship, so she must have thought she missed her chance to be with me. This is where the story gets bad. At this time, I was fairly active on Tumblr. I occasionally talked about my life and mostly reblogged photos and stuff. I was on there one day when something odd happened. One of the blogs I followed had received an ask with some phrases I recognized. It took a second to register that it was taken from my About page. That made me freeze. I read the message properly. someone was asking this completely random person to analyze a section of text from my page, asking for their opinion on the type of person who would write it. I cannot stress how messed up it was to see people talking about me like I was a character in a book that they were trying to study. The reply was basically, "I don't know, sorry." But the important thing was that the question hadn't been anonymous. It linked to someone's blog. Obviously, I wanted to know who had taken such a bizarre interest in me. As far as I knew, no one in real life other than my boyfriend knew about my page. Well, no prizes for guessing who was behind it. What I found was like a shrine. She was using a fake name, but I recognized Lily all over that thing. It was this cutesy pink and red page. There were a few photos about her interest, but most of the content was focused on her primary interest, me. Most of the posts were about me. There were accounts of things I'd done recently. "He told me about such and such, he went to a nightclub recently," etc. As well as references to things from as far back as I'd known her. It was clear she'd been keeping tabs on me both online and offline, gathering up every scrap of information she could about my life, and hoarding it here in her collection. She talked about us getting lunch together, and how special our dates had been to her, as if it was anything more than acquaintances getting food after class. She talked about the time she had forcibly kissed me in the woods, but she wrote it off as if it had been mutual. She quoted lyrics from my favorite song, and talked about how she'd always be there for me, no matter who else came into my life. Lots of references to loving me just the way he is, which answered another mystery about an anonymous love letter I'd received earlier that year with the same wording. It got worse. There were lots of posts about my boyfriend as well. These weren't so nice. They got vicious, talking about how he didn't deserve me. He didn't know what he had. If she was with me, she'd be jealous of anyone who came near me. So my boyfriend not being a jealous person meant he didn't love me. It was angry and hateful. I didn't like to think about the sort of person who could write so obsessively being fixated on me. One thing that didn't make sense at first was that the blog also made plenty of references to Lily's best friend Stephen. She had never mentioned this person to me. Her post talked a lot about Stephen and how great a friend he was, and how much fun they had together, how he looked out for her, etc. I was trying to work out whether this was an online friend, when one specific post made it all click. She had posted a photo and captioned it with, "Stephen sent this to me. He knew I would like it, and I love it," or something like that. The problem was, the photo was taken from my own page. I hadn't sent it to her. She took it from my page and then claimed this fictional best friend of hers shared it with her, because in her head, she split me into two people. In her messed-up fantasy life, I was both the perfect best friend, who was always looking out for her, and her soulmate who was bound to end up with her when I finally got over my sweet, kind boyfriend, and all the other easy girls I hung out with that she made dozens of posts complaining about. Who was she complaining to? Oh, Lily had an audience. She asked open questions about me and her relationship with me, and got messages back from her followers, people who took what she said at face value. I saw a bunch of random people agreeing with this stalker that my boyfriend didn't deserve me, and we were bound to break up soon so I could be with Lily, the person I was clearly supposed to be with. She had this fake fan-fiction version of my life up for anyone to share their opinion on, and she'd made herself out to be the hero of it all. I went maybe a month back into this page's history. I did not look at everything that was there, it was too much. So I'm not sure how long this had been going on. I sent Lily a message confronting her about the blog. She said nothing. And I cannot stress how weird it was to have found pages and pages dedicated to me, with her talking about how she was in love with me and would make sure we ended up together, slamming my boyfriend, and building a fantasy life with two different versions of me in it that she clearly believed to be real. Then acting like it hadn't happened. She said nothing. She didn't address it. She just changed the subject even after I pushed, and it was like she hadn't even registered what I said. I've never seen anything else like it. She deleted the page, of course, or at least changed the name and hid it so I never found it again. It wasn't the end, though. I wasn't going to hang out with her anymore, but we were still shoved together in classes, and she had started to actually scare me with what she might do next. I'm kind of a paranoid person. Knowing someone was obsessively keeping track of me for who knows how long freaked me out. The next thing she pulled was trying to seduce my boyfriend. It was an absolutely useless attempt that only made him uncomfortable. He told me about it right away. What was her plan there? Did she hope to tell me he cheated and wait for me to break up with him? Why would I want her after that? When that didn't work out for her, she tried hitting on 3 of my other friends. None of them took the bait. She ended up dating one of my former housemates for a while, but made sure to send me messages while they were together, letting me know she'd rather be with me. No thanks. Lily made sure to stay in my life the whole time I was at university. There was a time when I tried to pull away from her, and she ended up starting rumors about me and damaging a career opportunity I put a lot of work into. I don't know what else she did behind my back, but it made me realize it was safer to let her think she was part of my life while ignoring her, rather than doing something that would cause her to get angry. After I graduated, Lily still wanted time together, but I knew I didn't have to now. I made excuses about work and barely talked to her after that point. I almost entirely stopped posting on social media that I knew she knew about. Of course, she didn't give up that easily. She tried to start conversations, asked me to meet up with her, attempts I usually ignored. I didn't like to think she was still tracking me online, but she probably was. I don't know how, but she'd occasionally reference things I'd mentioned online somewhere she shouldn't have known about. The last time we had a real conversation, she sent me a message out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken at all in months, and we hadn't talked about anything serious in much longer than that. Thinking about that conversation still makes my skin crawl, but I'll summarize what happened. At first, she asked me some questions about how long I had known I was queer. I told her some basic stuff, the kind of thing I tell anyone who asked. Then she changed the subject. She started talking about how would I feel about her if she was a boy, about wanting to be a boy for me. The messages quickly became fetishistic. She went into plenty of detail about fantasies she had, of the 2 of us. Again, we were not friends at this point. We'd never been especially close, at least not from my perspective, and we had barely spoken for years. I can't imagine sending messages like that to even a close friend, let alone someone who barely knows you. I tried telling her to not pull this crap with me, but she decided to change tactics. She sent photos of herself, followed by a bunch of messages, maybe 4 or 5 a minute. Way too fast for me to reply before the next one arrived. Basically, quoting back what I told her about myself and my past earlier. She was telling me these things as if they had happened to her. She was role-playing as me. The worst part was that she seemed to believe it was real, that those things actually had happened to her, even when she was quoting me word for word. Things I told her only hours before were now her life. It was like she was trying to absorb my history, to take it over, to make my life part of her. Yeah, I didn't talk with her again after that. I ignored future attempts she made to talk to me, and I eventually silently deleted her from the inactive social media, which was her only real way of contacting me. I really thought she might finally move on. A few days ago, she sent me a friend request. It's sitting there, unanswered, because I know if I delete it, she'll only send another one. Lily and I met nearly 12 years ago. This story is just the highlights, and even then, it's only the stuff I know about for sure. A lot happened behind my back. I know it did. It's a girl who spent 12 years obsessing over me, fetishizing me, stalking me, and harassing me. Let's not meet again. The fantasy life you built for the 2 of us in your head is the only place you'll be seeing me anytime soon. 2. So this takes place last Halloween, when it was my first semester in college. I'm a freshman female. It was Halloween, and while my amazing roommate was getting drunk and partying with my ex-friends for the 100th time, I was alone and bored in my dorm room. Granted, I didn't want to risk a chance of COVID, but I couldn't stand being in that damn room any longer. Fuck it. I wanted to party, so I started looking around in my phone. I forgot how exactly I came across her, but a girl who was a self-proclaimed freshman invited a group of 10 people to this party her friends were throwing. Social distanced and everything, she promised us. Luckily, my couple friend wanted to jump on this party. Granted, we social distanced and wear our masks. The girl sent us the address, told us to tell the people there Monica invited us. Well, that's where things got weird. One of my ex-friends decided, fuck it, let's not wait any longer for us to get ready. Granted, I was still putting on my makeup, and went to the party himself. When he got there, he did exactly as this Monica said, and the guy there refused to let him in and called him a slur. This ex-friend was a little weird, so we thought, hey, what the heck, we'll just leave if we sense something is off. After driving there in my friend Steve's car, my friend and I, Mary, got out of the back seats and were instantly dumbfounded. Like we weren't certainly expecting a castle or anything, but this place is a literal dump and the neighborhood is extremely dirty and dark. Well, even though we got the creeps from the place, we did just spend 30 minutes getting there, so fuck it. We walked to the door, and this guy, who was absolutely plastered and at least on 3 different drugs, answers. We tell them we're Monica's friends. Confused, he looks at Mary and just silently nods and opens the door for us to come in, ignoring Steve completely. Well, what met us was certainly not what we expected. There were around 20 frat guys huddled around a table filled with booze and drugs, silently watching a girl, the only female there, mind you, giving a guy a lap dance. No masks, nothing. We were the only ones wearing them. Confused and horrified, we silently head down a huge black staircase that was smack dab in the middle of the cramped living room. What greeted us was not another group of people or Monica and her friends that supposedly invited us there. Instead, I kid you not, at least 8 black locked doors or more that looked like they come out of the Saw movie greeted us. After trying one of the doors, Steve looked on in horror as the adjacent door slowly opened. What looked like 2 at least middle-aged greasy men came crawling out, looking at Mary and I in a weirdly perverted way. Unlocking and entering one of the numerous doors, we could only watch in horror as another bouncer-looking man came out of nowhere and started screaming at Steve. "Who the hell invited you guys here?" "Monica," we all reply, really confused. The dude just looked bemused, goes, "Who the fuck is Monica?" We take that as our cue to leave, and we hardly run up fast enough before the bouncer starts to shove and tries to tackle Steve towards the ground. Leaving that crackhead house confused as fuck, we finally see Monica and 2 other scandalously clothed girls. Literally looking as white as a sheet, she gives a small awkward smile and wave, and we floor the hell out of there, never looking back. Yep, don't go to random parties in large cities you're unfamiliar with. The weird part, or really not so weird part, was that Monica was trying to get me to come alone, knowing I was a female. In all honesty, I think the people at the party and Monica really only had a problem with Steve, and totally did not expect Mary to bring her boyfriend, or for me to come with friends. Afterwards, Steve told us he totally believed it was either a drug house or a prostitution ring that had tried luring Mary and I in. I didn't call the police, but made an informal report a couple of days later. Basically, the cops told me they would check out the house but inform the owners who sent them, me. Well, I'm not putting my life nor my friends' families' lives in danger, so I said to leave it, but I still gave them the address and the name of the girl who invited me, a student. I don't know if they did anything, so doubt it. It's a large city, and an armed robbery occurred a minute away from my apartment a couple days ago, so who knows? 3. This happened like 10 years ago when I was in my first year of university. A week or 2 before classes started, I moved into student accommodation. It was shitty, a huge block of apartments built in the 60s in the center of town. I was keen to make friends, as everyone was, and made sure to get to know all the people in my student halls. It was during this time I met Mike and John, 2 friends who had known each other before university started. Both were pretty geeky, cool, I thought, guys, who were easy to get along with platonically. I also met a girl, Erica, and together with Mike and John we made a little friendship group. We'd hang out often and go clubbing and have dinners in our shitty kitchen. It was nice. Eventually it became clear that John and Mike had crushes on me, which was unreciprocated, and I started to feel a little uncomfortable hanging out with them so much. I had gotten into classes and met some fun people on my course. I also grew up in the city that I went to university, so it was easy to fall back into my old friendship group, and I'd often end up staying at my parents' home. I also started dating my ex-boyfriend again. Basically, I was in our student accommodation less and less, and didn't really have time to hang out with John and Mike. Around that time, things got weird. It started with a random Facebook account adding me and then hurling abuse at me. To be honest, Facebook trolls were common back then, so I didn't really care. I just got weirded out when they started adding some of my family members on Facebook, and I asked them to stop. I mostly ignored the account at first, as nothing too horrific came from it. I did, however, have some suspicions that it was either John or Mike, due to some things they had said. But again, I didn't care enough to make anything out of it. Then one day, when I was walking back into the student accommodation, I heard someone shouting "Slut!" from the building. The first time I honestly thought it was just drunken students messing around with each other. I didn't think for a second that it would be directed at me. Another day, again, as I'm walking towards my accommodation, I hear male voices shouting "Slut! Slut!" And now I'm weirded out because no one else is around. The next time I'm walking towards my building, I once again hear "Slut! Slut!" I whip my head towards the windows of the building just in time to see Mike and John ducking down from the windows. I yell back that they're fucking idiots and they can go fuck themselves, and I carry on with my day. From then on, I point blank refuse to speak to them, not even a hello in passing. A month later, I go to a nightclub with Erica, and we end up bumping into Mike and John. They apologize profusely, and I'm always way too nice when I'm drunk, so I forgave them. We hung out for the rest of the night with Mike, in particular getting progressively drunker and weirder, so we decided to call it a night and head back towards our accommodation. I'd asked Erica to come to my room after a snack, so we both got off at my floor, 10th floor, when Mike decides he wants to come with us. At this point, he had been getting weird for too long, so we stand on the landing of my floor. I'm not about to let him into my room or floor's kitchen. And I try to stand my ground and tell him we want to call it a night. He is completely fixated on me at this point, not Erica, and keeps trying to hug me, while I'm telling him to please leave and go to bed, and he's acting like a drunk idiot. While this conversation is happening, it's starting to feel darker and weirder, and my heart's starting to beat fast. I've completely sobered up at this point, and I just want him to go away. All of a sudden, I hear the door to the stairs open, and Erica is running up the stairs, not walking, running. We both obviously felt that this was getting dangerous, but I could not believe that she would abandon me like that. I never forgave her for that. Anyway, as if I wasn't terrified already, now that I'm alone with Mike, my adrenaline is going crazy. For reference, he's easily 6'4" and quite overweight, whilst I'm 5'3" and was at the time 110 pounds. I had grown up in a roughish area, so I always felt like I had a lot of street smarts and could handle myself. And I did well on this occasion, but man, I've never felt so vulnerable. And I've been in some shitty situations. He keeps asking me to let him in my room, and I just keep looking him straight in the eyes, saying no, 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 no. All this time, he's trying to pull me in for a hug and put his arm around my waist and kiss my face. I'm just ducking and diving under his arms, pushing him away or just backing away from him. I felt like a cornered animal. This went on for like 20 minutes. I put on my best voice of authority and say firmly, "You are not coming to my room. This is the last time I'm telling you. I'm getting pissed off now. You need to go to your own room and go to bed." He finally says okay, and I try to confidently walk towards my room, so he can't see how scared I am. I felt like if he saw my fear, he'd know I was powerless, and he'd just try to force me. The way the floor plan is, there is the lobby, and then a group of rooms on either side. There is an initial set of unlocked doors you have to walk through, and a short hallway to another door that locks, but we barely ever locked it. And then another hall with our kitchen, and all of our apartment doors, which we always locked. I walk slowly to the unlocked doors, open them, and then, when I know he can't see me, I run for my life to the locked door. My whole body is shaking at this point. I go through the second door and quickly lock it behind me. The minute the lock clicks, I hear the initial set of doors slamming open and boom, 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 boom of Mike running down the hall and trying to open the door I just locked. I've just taken my hand off the lock when he starts shaking the doorknob and slamming the door to the point that I think he's going to break it down. I run to my apartment and lock my apartment door. At this point, I just want someone to save me. I'm freaking out, so I call my boyfriend. My toxic as fuck boyfriend thinks I'm exaggerating, and that I probably led this guy on. I promise all of you I did not. I was never a flirty type of person, and Mike had no reason to think I ever liked him like that. I'm trying to convince him to come and get me, because I'm scared, but he refuses. All the while I can still hear Mike banging on the door. We speak for 15 minutes and hang up. When we hang up, I see that I have around 30 to 40 missed calls, all from Mike. It also left several voicemails, all of them saying the same crap. It was him speaking in this weird, high-pitched voice. "Please, Jaffa Cakes, please, I just want to watch you sleep. Please, Jaffa Cakes, I promise I won't do anything. I just want to cuddle with you. Please, I just want to lie in bed with you, please." This went on and on. It grossed me out so much. I just wanted to sleep, but I felt so unsafe, and I could still hear him trying to open the door to the hallway. Eventually, the banging subsides, and I start feeling safer. About 10 minutes later, the fire alarms go off. I could not believe how unlucky I was. We have to evacuate the building. I'm contemplating just staying in my room because Mike is still in my floor. But I hear the people on either side of my room opening their doors, and I think it's just safer to be with people at this point. We go downstairs and outside, and I spot Mike scouring the crowd, obviously looking for me. Glassy-eyed and crazy-looking. I just try to make myself as small as possible and stay hidden amongst the crowd. Firemen end up coming, and after 20 minutes they shout for everyone from floor 10 to come forward. Out of 18 floors? I don't know why, but I thought Mike had put them up to it so he could find me, which is obviously silly, but I was hesitant to expose myself from my hiding place and go over to the firemen. Once I do, the firemen ask us which one of us set off the fire alarm, because it came from floor 10. I don't know why, but it took a while for it to register for me that Mike had set off the fire alarm on my floor when he realized I wouldn't open the door to try and flush me out. What a psycho. I'm still trying to keep a mental note of where he is in case he does anything, and see him sitting on the floor crying with John consoling him. I think John spoke some sense into him because I didn't hear from him again that day. I ended up leaving that university a month or so later. Aside from that experience and being seriously disappointed by all my new friends, I didn't particularly like my course either. Mike kept trying to text me and call me, I assume when drunk because it was always late at night, for years afterwards. And his little troll account kept trying to find out where I'd gone and what I was up to. I hope he got help in the end, or at least learned how to handle his drink. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories. Episode 543. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Also, please do like, comment, and or subscribe if you haven't done already and you'd like to see more. That is greatly helpful to me and the algorithm. I feel I should probably add lightning effects there. I won't, though. I won't. But, yes. Basically, the more interaction the video gets, the more YouTube thinks people like that video, more people should see it. And then they'll give it a bit more of a push, which ultimately helps me, therefore helps the channel, because I am the channel. So, yeah, okay. That's enough yammering on about that. Let's see. Good news is 2 videos recorded in 1 day, so that means I'm getting a bit closer to functioning as the Hellfreezer of old, which means that now that I'm getting to the point that I'm able to do that I can then get back to producing videos in the old way. Which for me usually means a bunch of recordings start of the week, then having a few days off at the end of the week. We're not there yet, but I should be able to get like 2 done in a day, take a day off and so on, which also means I'm able to do the bigger projects like Glitch Monthly. Still not giving you a date on that, but I'm hoping kind of sort of soon. Maybe end Nope, not giving you a date, but kind of sort of soon. That's the best I'll say. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.